What is going on, Los Angeles Bruin Nation, LAFB family? It is the dynamic duo back together for all of you. The Thrill and Madman here talking all things UCLA football. And my goodness, what another crazy world we live in here. Another crazy week where UCLA football, once again, at the epicenter of so many storylines nationally in terms of the entire landscape of college football. And how excited are we to discuss that? And so much to uncover. We got incoming transfer portal gets. We got some outgoing transfer portal folks. Sure. We got some implications, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the Atimalala situation, and then also celebrate so many of our Bruin alum that were drafted in the NFL draft here these past few days. But first and foremost, before we talk about all of that, my brother from another mother, Will the Thrill Decker. How we doing, brother? I'm so excited to be doing this. I know we've been texting back and forth the last few days. We've had some travels, and it's been sort of the countdown to have this discussion because so much has been going on. We've been so excited. But first of all, how are you doing? I know you were at Coachella last week and some travels. Just how's life? How's everything going?
Life has been fantastic. And I mean, the Bruins headlines are just, the tip of the iceberg right now. But for those wondering, man, so Jamal was on vacation right now. So we're getting news. I'm getting pinged like every single day, a new commitment, a new storyline. And I was about to combust with all these takes coming on, man. I don't know if I could take it any longer to get on the pod. We finally found a time that worked for both of us. And I'm just excited to be here, man. So much to talk about. I joked with you beforehand. We might be doing this for 3.5 hours tonight, but probably not. But it's going to be a long one because we got a lot to discuss. I have yet to even talk about the aftermath of the Nico situation with you, Joey Aguilar and that situation. I mean, the first NIL trade. Are you kidding me? That is one of the ultimate storylines that the NIL world has presented to us as football fans. So we got so much to talk about, man. I'm going to let you lead this, and I am just excited to get my takes off because this is what it's all about, baby. Let's go.
Let's go, baby. Let's go. So excited. My goodness, Will. It's if the world was just everything UCLA football and we didn't have to worry about anything else in life, that would be the dream scenario. Vacations, family, pish posh, man. Let's talk football. Let's get into it. Well, Will, let's start here. Let's start with the incoming folks over the last few days. So much excitement. Obviously, last week, the Atimalala took the headlines with Nico and Madden, and we'll talk so much about that. But it seems like there has been a bit of a domino effect of the arrival of Nico with some of the gets that we've gotten here, Will, and two in particular really jumping out over the last few days, and can't wait to sort of get your thoughts on it. The first, Javion Thomas from Cal. What a huge get this is. Javion from Oakland, California, your hometown, Will the Thrill. 5'10", 175, leading rusher for Cal last year, which is so surprising, right, to hear, because when you have this all-world running back like Jaden Ott from Cal, Jaden Ott now moving on to Oklahoma, he's transferring out, but Javion Thomas at that 5'10", 175, Will, 100 carries, 626 yards last year, 6.2 yards per carry, led Cal in rushing, and on top of that, 11 receptions, 91 yards. He seems to be, Will, that perfect complement to Jalen Berger in terms of a potential thunder and lightning type of situation. If you think about Berger as the bruiser, that true kind of in-between tackler with the quick feet and being able to get those tough yards in the Big Ten, Thomas seems to be that scat back that's really that home run guy. And we're very excited about Anthony Woods as well. And it feels like Thomas and Woods I think are going to battle for that sort of explosive running back slot. But I think getting Thomas, who was the number one running back available in the portal, and to be able to poach it from, other brother Cal and having to pay that calamity and poach them yet again. It's such a huge double victory there, Will, and can't wait to kind of get your thoughts on that. And then on the other side of the ball as well, another very decorated athlete here, Roderick Pleasant.
Defensive back. Yeah.
Well, one thing is for sure, there's three certainties in life. There's death, there's taxes, and there's UCLA, bringing in more people in the secondary. This feels like the 13th secondary get of the offseason.
Only
You
five
can never,
guys to play. You know,
you
like,
can never have too many defensive backs. But Roderick Pleasant comes from Oregon after 2 years at Oregon, another hometown kid from California. Will Pleasant had the CIF 100-meter record, 100-meter yard dash record, 10.14 seconds in the CIF Southern Sectionals in 2022. He comes in now, Will, with 3 years of eligibility and an opportunity to just continue with that depth and versatility. And I think he's also going to, with that blazing speed, potentially make a huge impact in special teams and in the return game as well. So we've got Javion Thomas, we've got Roderick Pleasant as these two big incoming folks. Will, your thoughts?
Yeah, let's start with Javion Thomas. I mean, the number one running back in the transfer portal. So you now compare the number one running back in the portal with the number one quarterback, Nico Iamaleava. So think about that. That's UCLA coming on top for two very much needed positions. And I'll be honest with you, Madman, while I considered the running back room, I thought it was going to be fine. You know, you had Berger, you had Woods, you had Anthony Frias, who, you know, I was at the Friday Night Lights practice, ripped off like a 50-yard touchdown run in that practice. They didn't have that, you know, bell cow, that number one back that you needed to be successful with, in my opinion. Anthony Woods, he had that huge year at Idaho a couple of years ago, but what's my, you know, constant conversation when it comes to these guys jumping from a smaller, you know, style of play? Because he went to Utah last year. He didn't play at Utah. This is going to be his first taste of big football. Let's be honest. I said power three. Do you look at the draft picks that came out in the first round? It's a power two, you know, world now with the Big Ten and the SEC. He's coming to one of those power two schools in UCLA. So it's going to be a big jump. It's a seismic jump to expect he was going to give similar numbers around that, even with Deshaun Foster leading the way, who we both believe is one of the best running back mentors, you know, in the sport. So you get Javion, you know, a guy that averaged over 6 yards a carry. He's going to be the number one running back. And you do it against Cal, who just, man, licking their wounds already. I mean, we just saw Femi walk across the stage and be a draft pick for the Tennessee Titans in the second round. I mean, this is a dude that, you know, was at Cal as well. So, like, you have these different stories. We're just plucking Cal players and putting them in the league. It's kind of a beautiful thing after that, you know, lawsuit that they kind of pulled out of their ass, if you will, a couple of years ago. So that's a beautiful thing with Javion Thomas. And then Roderick Pleasant, man. People forget this guy was at Oregon, but he was a top 100 recruit at a lot of different places. And the reason I really like this, he may not be a day one starter in the secondary, but what has UCLA needed badly? You know, especially with Logan Loya departing. Especially a couple of years ago, we had freaking Colson Yankoff taking kickoff returns. This guy is going to be a special teams all-star in the return game. You mentioned he has like a 10-1-4. I mean, that's like almost Olympic level speed out there. And you can throw that guy back and return punts and kicks now and give yourself a real advantage on the special teams. That's just such an addition to the squad. And his upside is, you know, unlimited, as we talked about, you know, as a potential secondary player. So you pair Pleasant and Thomas together, man. And, you know, UCLA football, I mean, we are on a hot streak right now. And I got to give a lot of credit to Deshaun Foster and company for landing these two big commitments.
No, Will, so well said there. And we've sort of talked about it where Deshaun's taken some big swings. I mean, these are some big cuts here, and it could have been very easy for him to be able to just kind of take a step back and say, hey, we got the Iamaleavas. I've got my roster. Let me sort of work on meshing. But the fact that they're staying so aggressive with these additions and the fact that they're connecting is so what's so exciting. And I think you said it best there, Will. I think with Javion Thomas, what I'm also really excited about is what is he going to look like as a feature back, right? I mean, think about that. He led Cal in rushing last year, but he didn't lead them in carries. Like, Ott had more carries. And for as great as we think Jaden Ott is, and a lot of defenses were sort of keyed in on him, and so it's not a fair apples-to-apples comparison. But on that roster, with the same quarterback and the same offensive line, a player like Jaden Ott, who is so decorated and so respected nationally, obviously we talk about him being able to transfer to Oklahoma, big NIL package there, presumably. Jaden Ott had 3.3 yards per carry with Cal last year, and Javion Thomas had 6.2. I mean, Will, you're talking about nearly double the yards per carry on the same team with the same line, leveraging the same system, and getting the ball from the same quarterback. And so to your point, Will, this bell cow opportunity, I think is really significant with Javion Thomas, but then also, can you keep him fresh enough with a burger and do sort of a thunder and lightning? And I think, Will, what I'm excited about is it also helps this offensive line now get a better understanding of who are going to be the primary running backs back there. When you know the style of play of a running back, I think it becomes easier to block. It leads to continuity, and you just become a tighter unit. When you don't know who you're blocking for back there, or there's sort of a musical chair for running backs, that becomes harder. And I think, Will, it seems pretty obvious, particularly in the last few weeks of practice. I think we feel really good about Sam Yoon at center. I think we're feeling really good about Armella and Cortland Ford coming in.
Yeah.
And then we've got DeGiorgio that I think we're feeling good about, in Unije. I think that seems to be the five, with Eugene Brooks kind of lurking, and I think there's kind of 6 guys right now for those 5 spots. And I think once we solidify who the 5 are going to be, obviously Yoon will be the center. And so it comes down to kind of those other 4 spots. And then you got these 2 running backs, and you've got that Deshaun Foster mentality with the running game. And now you pair it, to your point, Will, with Tino Sunseri's offense with the number 1 quarterback in the portal. I mean, now you're starting to really play with dynamite here in a very, very significant way. So much to be excited about moving forward. And like we talked about, Will, the barometer has changed, from that 5 to 7. Now it feels like 7 to 9. And there's variability. You got to stay healthy. You got to catch a couple of breaks. But we're now living in that 7 to 9 win world where if things hit right, I mean, you're talking about a 9-3 in one of the big 2, as you described it. And my God, we're potentially knocking on the door of a college football playoff. Anything you want to add before we head to our next topic on that?
No, I think keep the train rolling. We got to get through so many different topics. We got to get this thing going, man. So I'm down, man. Lead and I will follow, Madman.
You got it, brother. You got it. Well, so the portal giveth and the portal taketh away as well. And so obviously we've had some really exciting inflows that we just talked about over the last few weeks. But now with the Iamalieva's arrival, Nico and Madden, and this sort of creation of the succession line, we've had some departures, Will, in the portal, and it was expected. And it was expected really at the quarterback position because, my God, even before Nico and Madden arrived, that was a deep room. I mean, we were looking at, that was sort of like a lunch line at an elementary school, when it was sort of cafeteria. I mean, it was a long line of quarterbacks. Will, the first, of course, is Joey Aguilar went from kind of being the star of Friday Night Lights to sort of 48 hours later going to Tennessee, of all places. I mean, my goodness, Tennessee realizing they've lost Nico. The quarterback market seems to have dried a bit because we're on the other side of spring practice. And now they're saying, well, why not just take the guy that essentially got replaced for our guy in the first quote-unquote trade in the NIL era? Joey Aguilar goes to now the Tennessee Volunteers. Robert McDaniel joins Aguilar in the transfer portal. I think it's something that we expected. And a kid you and I really like, Will, and we've talked about him for over a year now because we were talking about him last year at spring, talked a lot about him over the last few weeks. Demarcus Davis has entered into the portal. Deshaun sort of pulled back on it a little bit, so it's a little bit hazy, but all indications right now are that he's probably going to enter into the portal. Tough 3 losses there. Can't blame any of those kids, Will, just given the expectation here of kind of going from Nico to Madden and so forth. But your thoughts now with these 3 departures in particular?
Yeah. Shocking is not the word when it comes to this when the news came out. So, you're losing a very talented option in Demarcus Davis, potentially. I thought his ceiling was as high as any quarterback in this room. And, I still am kind of waiting to see my up close and personal with Nico. I went out this Saturday for the open practice. He
wasn't there. Yep.
But, Demarcus Davis looked like a future star if he figured everything out. So that loss hurts. I understand where he's coming from. But I had such high hopes for Demarcus Davis. When it comes to McDaniel, it was, it's just the crazy NIL world. Same with Aguilar, right? Like these guys were here for maybe 3 months, and they're already shipped off to a new place trying to figure it out. So the NIL trade, though, is just fantastic. Like, this is, with Joey Aguilar going to Tennessee, where Nico Iamaleava going back home to UCLA, it's going to be fascinating to watch how these guys do at their respective schools now. Like, this is a legitimate thing where it's like, who won the official trade, for NIL? Maybe Joey Aguilar, comes into Tennessee with a little bit more talent around him and kind of succeed there with a Josh Heupel-like system. Or maybe Nico is able to elevate UCLA like we talked about and, get us that 9-10 win range and maybe be threatening for one of those last college football playoff spots. So that's going to be something I've got my eyes on. And it's just a crazy NIL world we're in right now with those guys. So, like, it's going to be a lot of fun to chart the path of both Nico and Joey after just doing a flip-flop. It's a crazy world we live in with college football. It's getting more and more fun by the day, I got to be honest with you.
Thrill, what's so interesting, and I'd love to sort of get your thoughts on this. We just had the draft, right? And massive storyline, of course, was the fall of Shedeur Sanders, sort of the free fall. Some had even him as the number 1 overall pick. I think there was sort of a consensus that he was going to be top 5. Shedeur goes all the way to the 5th round. Then you look at a guy like Quinn Ewers, who, was highly decorated, at various parts of the season. Heisman front runner at one point, early to mid-season. He goes all the way down to the 7th round. Now, what's significant there, Will, and you and I sort of both know this, with Shedeur, you're talking about, if not the number 1 NIL earner, he was sort of top 2 or 3 with Arch Manning, right there. I mean, you were looking at a guy who was making $6 or $7 million of NIL, in college. He's going to be making, 1/7 of that in the NFL next year.
Yeah.
When you look at Quinn Ewers, right? So many reports in December. Colin Cowherd was mentioning this as well. Quinn Ewers potentially was going to go to USC for that $4 million range, right? Ironic, that $4 million number, which was the number that Nico's team wanted from Tennessee. Now Quinn Ewers as a 7th round pick will, again, he's making 1/6 of that next year. And so it becomes very interesting, particularly in this Aguilar-Iamaleava trade, because now I think both what happened to Shedeur Sanders and Quinn Ewers now becomes a cautionary tale to, I think, a lot of guys, where if you are a fringe NFL prospect that particular year, and you are in a big program, Power 2 football, and you're a starter, conventional wisdom now says you are going to make a lot more money in college than going to the NFL. And so even though there was a lot of volatility involved with Aguilar and Iamaleava, I think what we saw in the draft now is going to make guys kind of caution. They may hop around schools, but before they make that jump, they got to know for sure that they're going to be a high pick. And so when it comes back to UCLA, it feels like Iamaleava is going to be here a little bit, and Aguilar is going to be in his spot a little bit to really ensure that they can kind of get to that next level. Your thoughts just in terms of this trade too, Will, and what you saw with the draft, and any thoughts there as it pertains to UCLA?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, and I'm going to bring up a couple things with that. What we've seen from the NIL era, like you mentioned, you're getting paid more money to essentially go back to college. Like, this was not an option 3 or 4 years ago, at least over the table and in legal ways when it comes to college sports. Now that it is, Quinn Ewers is kind of like a horror story, if I'm being honest with you, because this kid, while incredibly talented, he needed to refine his skills. And you look at some of the recent successes within the NFL draft. Jaden Daniels had like 60-plus starts. He was starting at Arizona State before the pandemic and went all the way up to 2024. Bo Nix was the old joke. This guy's like Van Wilder. Like, he's been there for like 7 years. It feels like it was 10. Even Joe Burrow, where it didn't work at Ohio State, but he, got the practice reps, went to LSU, started for 2 years. He was basically in college for 6 years at that point. I think he was a 24-year-old rookie. Look at what he's doing now. There's no reason to rush your development at this point when the paycheck is arguably going to be bigger, unless if you're a top 10 pick, which is, very, very hard to do. So what's the point of jumping if you can just set yourself up for even longer and probably set your career up, not even money-wise, by doing that stuff? So I found that fascinating. I also found it fascinating. We got to have this conversation.
Please.
Deshaun tying his future. I think he knows, like we know, It's time to act. I've got a short leash here. We got a new chancellor in the building. Even Martin, he knows I have to put up or shut up right now. He's tying the future of his program to the Iamaleava family and what they could potentially bring there. Brothers playing the quarterback position. We have a succession plan from maybe Nico to his younger brother, Madden. When has that happened in college football, period? That is fascinating to me that you would do this with this particular family. And I'm not, I have no opinion on the matter. I don't know them, but as reports may have, come out, a family that, is had its issues right now with other schools and trying to get that money. I find that fascinating to kind of put your legacy on the line of these kids. And Nico looks fantastic on tape. I think he's going to be really good. Madden kind of strikes me as like a jello ball situation where Lonzo is kind of Nico, if I look at the tape correctly. And it just goes back to what UCLA does with some of these families, the Ball family, the Betts family. It's just so cool that UCLA is able to do this. But I think Deshaun going all in, and not on only just one brother, but both, is one of the most underrated storylines I haven't heard talked about in depth. And I was just excited to bring that up to you. What is your thoughts on Deshaun doubling down on the Iamaleava family?
Yeah, no, Will, I think you said that really well. And it's high risk, high reward. I think in terms of everything that we're talking about, I think it becomes very high reward if you feel like the NIL situation for UCLA at particularly the quarterback position is going to be stabilized. And so I think you go in taking sort of a conscious risk, but I think Deshaun and Martin here are in collaboration and saying, look, we're very confident that we're going to be able to put the money together to be able to keep this sustaining year over year. Because look, we're talking about two things, right, Will, that are kind of coming together. The first is these kids actually don't want to go to the NFL unless they are surefire first-round picks or second-round picks where there's sort of a guarantee of money and playing time and growth and development. So you're going to stretch things out. You talked about the Bo Nixes and the Jaden Daniels. I mean, look at a Cam Ward, for instance. Will, exactly. Going from Washington State, now he's the number one pick in the draft. So you're going to go multiple schools. You're trying to sort of extend it until you find the school that's a fit. So you have this opportunity to have continuity, but it's predicated on your ability to have the nil to keep these guys. You want to be able to play in a Power 2 conference, check. You want to be able to offer a starting position and playing time, check. But then the third is you got to be able to come home with the NIL. So
check, by the way, like a physical check. Yeah.
Exactly, the literal check.
Yeah.
So here's where the rubber meets the road. Because if you feel like you're not going to get the NIL in year over year, because like we talked about it, Will, we've got Nico at about 1.5 million, 1 to 1.5 million. He blows up next year. That number goes way up. And so UCLA has to be able to match whatever number the market dictates for him if he has a great 2025 season. And if they believe they can do that and they can sustain year over year, then guess what? You're going to get 3, 4, 5 years in a row of an Iamaleava quarterbacking the UCLA Bruins. And that would be just such incredible continuity at the most important position in the sport in a time that the sport is the most volatile it's ever been. It's such a huge competitive advantage. But if you can't come home with that NIL and Nico is here for a year and then decides and he's going to bolt and it feels like the Iamaleavas are sort of a package deal, you lose everybody. And you didn't spend the time recruiting other quarterbacks because you put all of your chips in this basket. It is a high-risk, high-reward situation. So to me, I commend Deshaun Foster on the swing that he's taking, but I have to believe that he and Martin Jarman have a strategy and understanding that they are going to be able to fortify the NIL packages at the quarterback position for UCLA year over year to be able to make this work.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw it firsthand. We lost, I think it was 3 4-star quarterbacks, within the system, as we mentioned at the top of the hour. What we didn't mention was Brady Smigel, whose best friend is on UCLA's team right now, wanted to go to UCLA. He canceled his visit the second Madden committed to UCLA, commits to Michigan yesterday. So, this is a domino effect. I mentioned on the first episode, we talked about the Nico. It's a butterfly effect. This getting the Ayamalevas here, this could either change the future of
Right.
UCLA football for the better, or it could be a horror story. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And, I'm just thrilled for some people that cover UCLA football that, have put a lot of time and effort in this. UCLA has never been this interesting since, I would say, probably 2015 when they had that number one recruiting class with
Correct.
Rosen, Snoop's son. They had everything going on there. But UCLA is back to the top of the headlines within college football. And if they can, deliver some punch on the field with what they've brought to the table, you got the number one quarterback, number one running back, all that's great. If you can get 8 to 9 wins and maybe build upon that, because, I see what Deshaun's doing, man. I Friday Night Lights was a success to me. I was
Absolutely.
really, I really had a great experience there. He had Matt Barnes and Kerry Champion on the field, doing the Up and Smoke interviews. I talked to Mercedes Lewis on the field. It was very cool just to kind of talk to him and, one of the legends within the game. And,
no question.
Our buddy Quentin Lake was there. We've gotten to interview multiple times, and Carnell Lake, his dad. And, it was just a great experience. And I think he's hired the coaching staff that can potentially get them there, with Andy Kwan and Tino Sinceri. I mean, Kwan, that dude is a badass when he's coaching the offensive line. We were very close to him, and he's chewing them out. He's hard on them. But I think that's what this offensive line needs. They need that tough love so they can go out and play. I'm just so optimistic with what could potentially happen and just excited. It's a thrilling kind of time to be a UCLA football fan at the end of the day, Madman. So that's just what I got to, get out on that front. I mean, it's just incredible stuff right now, man.
It is incredible stuff indeed, Will. And, I'll double click to something that you said earlier where, look, we're going all in on these two, right? I mean, Brady Smigel was a target for over a year with UCLA as someone that was going to kind of potentially come in and help kind of change that trajectory. And I think other quarterback prospects are looking around and saying, okay, UCLA is really going all in on Nico and Madden. I think I need to sort of look elsewhere because that room is very, very crowded. Luke Duncan is, to his credit, staying. I love that. And I think he's going to continue to compete. I think Curtis Rourke, someone you're going to get very familiar with, Will, as a 49ers fan. I still believe Duncan kind of follows that archetype really well. But you got those three as in your quarterback room as your top three. And so that opportunity cost of saying no to everybody else to say yes to these three, it's got to come home. And I think Deshaun Foster, in many ways, is the Al Pacino in any given Sunday. Wow. When he goes to Jamie Foxx and says, listen, man, if you're going to miss big, if you're going to miss big, I'm not going to eat your lunch about it. And so Deshaun is swinging for the fences, and it's either going to be a grand slam or he's going to strike out and whiff. But I think as fans, we're really excited to see UCLA playing so big, for such stakes. That risk reward is there. We understand it, but they're playing at the big boy table. This isn't at the kids table as potentially it has been, particularly in recruiting the last few years. And I think that's what's getting us so excited. Will, the other piece, kind of segueing of what makes a program so attractive is your track record into the NFL. And another great day and set of days for UCLA, Will. 5 players ultimately get drafted. Our fearsome foursome and Moliki Matavao continuing that lineage at the tight end position. Carson Schwessinger leading the way. First pick in the second round. We got Femi in the second round as well. Schwessinger going to the Browns. Femi going to the Titans, both in the second round. And then we come in there, Will, in that 6th round. Kane Madrano goes to the Commanders in the 6th round. Jay Toia, first pick in the 7th round to the Cowboys. And then Matavao in the 7th round to the Saints. Your impressions there, UCLA, again, a significant number of individuals in the NFL, beating out programs like USC, like Wisconsin, like Michigan State, like Washington.
USC, yes.
Absolutely. I mean, 5 for UCLA, only 3 for USC. So a significant day indeed in terms of, kind of getting to that next level. And then we had a number of guys sign undrafted free agent contracts. Ethan Garbers is going to take his run with the Carolina Panthers and so forth. So really excited to see all this. Will, your impressions of the fearsome foursome and Matavao getting drafted? I must say I was a little surprised that Toia was so low. in the 7th round, first pick of the 7th round. That surprised me a little bit. I was expecting him kind of closer into that 3rd and 4th, but I think everyone else kind of netted out where I thought they would be. Your thoughts on these 5?
Yeah, I think when we went back to last year, Toia was the most important player on that entire
No question.
set. So you would have thought he would have been like a 3rd, 4th rounder. Maybe picked where Osa Odigizua was, who got paid a bag to be with the Dallas Cowboys as of late. But looking at it, man, I mean, Carson Schlesinger being a fringe first round. I like to say this, when it's the first 5 to 6 picks in the 2nd round, that usually means you are basically a first rounder. You just team needs just went elsewhere. You know what I mean? And I believe if the Eagles, if Jahad Campbell wasn't there for the Eagles, they would have taken Schlesinger with that 31st pick that they traded up for. So Carson Schlesinger going to the Cleveland Browns, I think that is awesome. I think he's going to start day one. Captain America, as he's known to this fan base. I mean, I love Carson. I have a guy every year, as you know. Dulcich was my first year. Sharbs was last year. I think Toia was 2023, and then 2024 last year was Swesh. I mean, it was just impossible not to love this guy. The Superman sack he made against Nebraska on 4th down to make plays. We were at the Iowa game. He's picking off passes, holding Caleb Johnson to under 50 yards rushing. This guy did everything for UCLA's defense. It was just fun to see that. And then Femi, man, I mean, we were kind of the captains of the train.
Yep.
And it was like, let's get this guy to edge. Like, he's a body out there. Lo and behold, blows up at Senior Bowl week. I think he had 2 sacks in the game itself. And Femi, man, one of the best people around, like just happy leader. This team loved Femi in every facet. Chip loved Femi. Deshaun loved Femi. Everyone loved him. And for him to go in the 2nd round of the Titans, a team that is doing the full rebuild. They had the number 1 pick in the draft. So this is the 2nd pick behind Cam Ward. You're taking Femi Oladejo out. That tells me a lot of what they think about
great
Femi
point.
bring to the table. So that was exciting. And then when it comes down to it, man, Kane Medrano might be in the most successful position. Did you see the video of Adam Peters, former UCLA, goes, "Hey, young Bruin, it's old Bruin, Adam Peters. I got another old Bruin to my right. Who is their linebackers coach right now? It's Ken Norton Jr., the guy that was coaching him up and moved him to linebacker in the first place. So if you're Kane Medrano, he's got the best situation of any of these guys out there. And then with Jay Toia going to the Dallas Cowboys, that's just a fit, man. He's going to be next to Osa. Like, we got 2 Bruins in the trenches in the defensive tackle room. And then Matavao. I think, we talked about Jay Toia going higher. I think Matavao is underrated. He was the best offensive weapon we had last year. When things were falling apart, I still, rave about that play we made against Hawaii.
Yeah.
Falling apart. We get the false start on the drive that we took to, ultimately take the lead in that game. He comes back the next play, 1st and 15, gets us 17 yards, first down. He just made plays like that all year long. So Matavao making plays. I think he's going to have a shot to be tight end number 1 with the Saints whenever his time may come. And I mean, you mentioned Garbers. If Garbers had an offensive line last year in a particularly weak quarterback class where guys like Tyler Shook were going in the 2nd round, which I don't see it. I'm sorry. I got to be honest with you. If Garbers had an offensive line, I'm not saying he'd be a top 3-4 round quarterback, but once you get to that 5th, 6th, 7th round range,
he's probably getting drafted. Yep.
Yeah, because Garbers was gutsy. I know people, were frustrated with him last year, but that offensive line last year, guys, like, we had the worst run game in the country, like, for a Big 5 school. Like, it was pathetic. With no run game, you can't do anything. And Garbers, he's going to be a really good backup, I think, in his time. And, people love Ethan, and it's just a great situation for him. So I was just stoked to see everything happen for our Bruins, all that hard work, because this team is talented, man. And now we're finally kind of getting back to the point where we believe we should be good. And once we get the belief back in with the fans, the program, the players, UCLA is going to be scary.
Scary indeed, Thriller. My goodness. And, there was so much wisdom in what you said there, but it's that last piece, right? You believe that you're going to be good, and the building blocks now are there. You've got a coach that's swinging for the fences. He's brought in an elite coaching staff. You're recruiting your tail off. You're making deals, both with high school as well as with the transfer portal, and you're continuing to build that track record of all of these guys that are making it to the NFL. That's the ingredient, Will. Those are the ingredients to really get back to the rightful place that is UCLA football. Will, anything else you want to say before we wrap?
Man, buckle up because I don't think we're done. I got to be honest. I think more stuff is going to come out in the next coming weeks about UCLA football, man. So just stay tuned. Bruin Bible, this Bruin Bits, we're going to have everything coming your guys' way. And I think we should maybe say something. I'll be back a lot on this podcast coming soon. So I'm really excited.
No doubt. Come on now. This is Will, okay? He lives Pepperdine basketball. He's doing the play-by-play. He's doing all this great stuff, but the love is for UCLA, okay? It's like, Will, in the dating world. I had someone tell me this many, many years ago where it's like, sometimes when there's something going on with sort of the girl, it's like, does she like me? Does she not? I mean, where is it? It's like, you got to let go. It's like the boomerang. If you let go and she comes back, she was always yours. If you let go and she doesn't come back, she was never yours. And Will is always UCLA. So Thriller, we're so excited. You're going to be very much regular here over the course of the offseason as well as into the season. So the band is back together, and we're so thrilled about it. And I got a feeling that what Will is saying is spot on. We're not done here, fans. I think there's going to be more to come here in the days and weeks to come. And for all your needs, UCLA football, you know where to come. You know what it is. Hit that like and subscribe button for the UCLA LAFB channel. And as always, fours up forever.